Cats, cops, and C4. There's a pause as Cenk looks over to the paper file that Private Stream is passing him. You know I'm supposedly on break now, right? As if you were the type to not think on something off hours. The little smartass counters, and he sighs before opening it. Top 10 suspects? Top 5. If they're not responsible for the current mess you found yourself hip deep in, then you can still get them for a laundry list of other crimes, Private Stream says. And if it's not them? He asks, and he gets handed another folder with over a dozen tabs. Lower priority. These people have a pattern of corruption and self-interest that means they might be capable of doing things like this. Private Stream says, then plops 3 fat files on the table. The rest of the list is a bit more boring. Sure, there tends to be a lot of bad behavior when people can pay their bail money with pocket change, but beyond the first 17, it's just typical bad behavior. An abused prostitute here and there, reckless driving, public drunkenness, illegal substance abuses, or typical corporate backstabbing bullshit. I'll wager the more interesting ones are all of the above. Cenk notes as he stacks everything up. Thank you. I know I can be a bit of an ass to intelligence, but I'm being told to blow this off, but I actually have no idea what you're talking about, Private Stream says as he tilts up the hat. The illusion weakens ever so slightly to reveal the green skin and yellow eyes of a goob. You're a little cautious and sarcastic at times, but that's just normal. Oh well, I've been a bit short with some people in your outfit. I figured an apology was due. Considering I've at times received direct orders to be as annoying as the persona allows, I don't think you can be really drilled for that. Ah, okay. So what's it like being a Private Stream? I know the guy that made the persona, but what's it like playing him? You ever do some level of acting? Not really. Do you at least know what improv theater is? Isn't that where the actors are just making it up as they go? Mostly they also get props and direction, which is a lot what I've got going on here, but mix in the fact I can and will occasionally pull out a weapon and shoot someone with it. Or the fact that my character has to treat other people playing the same character as completely normal. It's like a huge gag that almost no one else is in on. It's great. Well, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Amen to that, human. I thought I was fucked being a go-bee that didn't like messing with machines. Couldn't break into film as I kept smirking, and now I'm having a party. Glad to hear it. Have fun, I need to sort through this madness, Cenk says, and Private Stream tilts his head to the side. Coffee? Beer? Something else? Honestly, I want something good and hard after how that day shook out. But I need a clear head, so I gotta go without gin. Right, don't worry if you go through a psychotic break and start eating the files. We have copies. Thank you, Cenk says in a tart tone. Just saying, Private Stream says before literally skipping off with a laugh. He rolls his eyes and opens the files. All right, first off is some Dren woman named Ma Kiton. He notes before reading a bit more quietly. Founder of the Kiton Chemicals production. Her factories and production plants have endless complaints of dumped chemicals and unsafe working conditions, but they're always up to specs when an inspector arrives. There's a note here that more than half the time, the inspector receives a sudden uptick to their bank account, or more recently are seen spending more money with physical currency rather than using their bank cards, suggesting a physical bribe rather than just wiring money. Beyond that, there is a rash of employees that have turned to pretty substantial crime sprees that either ended up with multi-century-long prison sentences or being outright killed fighting against police. Those that don't fall into the above categories have bounties of multiple millions on them. A few of them seem to have actually been taken by Pukey and his boys on the Chainbreaker. Finally, and most importantly, is that she's a downright savage when it comes to buying up other companies before more or less eating them alive and ripping out everything of use before sticking the people she doesn't want with the bill and screwing off. Something she intended to do with the extensive Frost portfolio before the compromise option of Amy came up. But that's not to say Kiton is alone in this. The rest of the top 5 all stand to make at least trillions, bordering on quadrillions if they can get their hands on the Frost portfolio. Marika comes from the raw resource and chemical angle. However, there's a large vehicle manufacturing mogul who's cornered nearly a full 0.1% of Centris's vehicle sales. Nearly getting one piece in 1,000 may not sound impressive at first. and then you remember that Centris is one of the most overpopulated and wealthy planets in the galaxy, and it is the center of galactic attention. If anything weird happens in the galaxy, people look to Centris first. That's not to say that Miss Lila Agrippa puts her name on everything like Kiton does. She just bought out and took control of enough companies and kept the old names as she seemingly couldn't be bothered. Her pattern is more cleaning house of any and all bloat of any company she takes over, which is normally laudable. But there are numerous complaints of employee burnout and stagnant wages. There are numerous reports of truly brutal exclusivity contracts, and she's very litigation happy, which keeps people quiet. From the looks of it, she's the type that trims the fat by slicing away a full inch into the meat and then goes on a rant as to why she's being sold such tiny steaks. She stands to get enough companies to round out that full 1/1000th of all vehicle sales on Centris if she takes even a relatively small chunk of the Frost portfolio, which, seeing as how there are several notes that she likes, things being as complete as can be, and a manic attention to detail bordering on obsessive-compulsive disorder, it does look like one hell of a motive. Third in the list is a distant relative to Amy in a sense. If following the logic of Amy being Amanda's daughter and not her clone, then Varia Embercole is her great-aunt twice removed. The Flame Erumenta's life experience reads like a bullet point list for every kind of position of power someone can work to without being outright born to royalty. She's been a police officer, a judge, a lawyer, a business owner, government employee and bank manager, and far, far more. The whole time she's been buying up asset after asset, and before Amy was woken up, she was downright in first place for getting the entire prize, which meant that it had to really, really sting for her to be denied the Frost portfolio. She had apparently been caught ranting that she deserved the fortune and how she had been cheated out of it. But beyond that wasn't even on Centris. Not that such a thing would stop her from, say, hiring a criminal gangster with resources to whack her niece, either as repayment for doing a solid in the past, promising something, or just dumping a lot of money on them. After all, the option that Miss Big was simply the hired contractor to get Amy killed is an unspoken but very real option. Next on the list of major suspects is someone that seems fairly out of place at first. A METAC businesswoman and all-star CEO named Juliet Comet. She has a pattern of being traded from company to company and rooting out the bad actors so effectively that she gets a contract bid on her every 5 years to basically swoop in and save an entire corporation. She's been bouncing around from spire to spire and company to company so much that her main residence is in orbit. What put her on this list was a trail of bodies that seemed to be orbiting around her. If a company hires her, then within 6 months, someone somewhere dies, almost to the day, which is suspicious as hell. But what's odd is that the pattern goes ahead of her at times. Someone in the next corporation she ends up in gets the axe, or the one she left. Never the corporation she's currently working for, though, which would throw off most casual investigations, especially as she's been fined for public drunkenness more than once and loudly caught complaining about people who were giving her grief and are apparently still alive. But it's still a strange enough pattern to be caught by a deeper and more comprehensive investigation. She worked for one of the Frost companies 6 months ago, almost to the day. Then one investor, a filing clerk, and the owners all died, or nearly all on the same day. It fit the pattern. But there was no motivation. Not really. She wasn't in the running for inheriting a position. She had joined the company, cleaned house as normal, made her usual bank, and was shown the door and the big sack of loot as usual. So if it was her doing these things, then why these victims in particular? Why Frost, Aurian, and Hallis, and why kill at all? She stood to make little, if any, profit. He pushes that from his mind as he looks to the next one. A major holder in the Frost Industries, Katarina Vertigo, a cloud Nagasha that was one of the ones in the running for at least a small chunk of the Frost portfolio, which is motivation enough, seeing as how even that small piece would get her a cool 5 trillion credits. But what really brought things home and put her on this list was that she was the most vocal against the compromise option. She was of the continuity faith, a primal reformist of the continuity to be accurate, which as a faith dictated that not only was a healing coma in any capacity immensely immoral, but cybernetically upgrading yourself to cheat death was wrong, prosthetic organs unnatural, and cloning as a technology should not be, period. Apparently, she was able to keep a lid on it most of the time, But Amy's birth had deeply and truly offended her on a level she had a court-mandated gag order to stop her from screaming about this. Apparently, only the divine primals deserved eternal life. Whack job. Life isn't eternal. It can just be extended. Even the primals can die. Cenk's mind drifts away as he wonders how she'd respond to Emmanuel, a holy primal, bringing healing comas, cloning and more to Lacron, aneurysm, mental blue screen of death, decrying him as unworthy of his status or flat out denying he's a primal. He shakes his head and closes the folder. He then plants his elbows at the desk and his head rests on his fists as he thinks. Potential serial killers, numerous monetary motivations and religious motivations as well. To say nothing of the idea that it may be all of the above with these women hiring out someone with assassins. So to find out who's responsible, they need to find Miss Big, whose signature is a few specific agents with a very distinct profile being spotted in the periphery to gruesome crime scenes. Of course, these women never stuck around, so it was more like trying to find an urban legend. Miss Big values her privacy on an enormous scale and will always prioritize her secrecy over literally everything else, which makes finding the bitch a bitch. The agents are unknown in name, and while their general profile and species have all been categorized, their features shift and the clothing they wear covers them completely. A veil is standard equipment for all of them, which now calls into question if any of them are willing. The first is a very, very tall Tret woman who's suspected to be using something like high-rise shoes or stilts to maintain that profile, as no one can pin her civilian identity if she ever had one. She will occasionally show up to give warnings or simply hand off items that are used as bribes or payment from Miss Big. The second is a snick noted to always smell like blood. Like the Tret, her hair color, skin color, and all the other little identifying details seem to shift, but she always smells like fresh blood. Third is a Pavorus with a white and red pattern. This one does not speak, merely glares and passes the occasional data pad with instructions that are roughly 70% death threat. Something niggles at Cenk's mind. He just missed something. Wait, he never got close to that. Watching snicked. What did she smell like? Did she get close enough for anyone to smell her? Could they have smelt blood over the stench of burnt hair? Could Vera?